Hi, everybody. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. It's good afternoon from me. My name is Del. I'm the Asia Regional Professional Development Manager for Macmillan Education. I'm based in Nonthaburi in Thailand, and it's a very fine afternoon, if a little bit hot. Where are you? Tell us where you are and what you're up to today. Hi, Toto. How are you? Hi, David. Hi, Andre. I think I missed some people. Hi, Ricky. Ali, nice to see you all. Stephen, welcome. I'm recognizing some faces already. Obviously, Toto, we know each other from Indonesia. Really miss you guys in Indonesia. Hello, 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 hello. Oh, from Nonthaburi as well, Arlene. Where are you in Nonthaburi? I'm in Bangkruai. We could be neighbors. Sua Luang. From Royats as well in Northeast Thailand. Ampere Muang. Okay, I think we're quite close then, because Bang Kruai is the center of my time. And anyway, doesn't matter. Welcome to the final of our 3 sessions this week, or for our what we're calling our spring webinar series, which is all about a growth mindset, helping our learners to learn. And today we've got a very special session. This is our ELT time special, and it's going to be on writing skills. So Blue and Super are going to join us in a moment, and they're going to be having a discussion about writing skills, and particularly with grading of writing skills. Now, the ELT time is a bit different to the webinars that you joined on Monday and Tuesday. Monday and Tuesday. What am I talking about? Tuesday and Thursday. Now, these webinars are mainly kind of like presentations, whereas today is more of an organic discussion between our 2 experts. They're going to be like I said, having like a kind of chat show where they're going to discuss the issue of writing skills. And they're going to very much rely on your contribution as well in the chat. So while they're having this discussion, please, please, please contribute and give your ideas to the discussion as well, and join in the discussion. As always, please don't forget to join us on our social channels. We are on Facebook, on WeChat, and we have our email addresses right there as well. So make sure you follow us so you can learn more about products. You can learn about upcoming sessions as well. This year, we have just started a new initiative called Changemakers. Changemakers is an opportunity for students to really become global citizens and to showcase their own initiatives and ideas for a more sustainable and a better future. We want to help students and teachers find their inspiration by sharing ideas and tips from the classroom, and then explore and reflect on what other people are doing across the world. So sharing their best practice from schools. So if you're doing any projects or anything like that, make sure you can upload the fruits of your students' labor to share them with the whole world. If you're interested in learning more, then go to the macmillaneducation.com website and find out more about Advancing Futures. That's macmillaneducation.com. And you can search for Advancing Futures from there, where you can find out all about sustainability, global citizenship, and diversity, equity, and inclusion. And whoops, there's a QR code here if you want to go straight to the Changemakers World Hub, which is where you can see what children not just children, what students are doing across the world to share their initiatives. So let's get on to today. Today is our ELT time special. As I said, it's an organic discussion with 2 of our experts from Macmillan Education Asia. We've got Super and Blue. I'll introduce those in a moment, and they're going to be discussing writing skills. But while they are the 2 speakers, as I mentioned, don't be afraid to give your thoughts and ideas in the chat, and Blue and Super will be engaging with you as they go through the discussion where possible. So here are our beautiful speakers. Blue is based in Vietnam. He is the regional teacher, trainer, and academic consultant for Macmillan Education. He's been involved in teaching and training for over 13 years in Vietnam. He's been working in a private language school. He's been working for doing other training, freelance training, and he's also an IELTS expert as well, being an examiner. Super is our senior regional academic consultant and teacher trainer based in Shanghai. And I'm sure you'll have seen Super before. He's done loads and loads of ELTea times before. This is Blue's first. So Super will be holding Blue's hand as he goes through this session, I'm sure. But Super's got tons of experience as well of teaching and training over 10 years, working in both private, worked in public language centers, worked in online, face-to-face, loads and loads of experience. So we're delighted to have them. I've gone a little bit over my time, so I'm just going to say have a wonderful ELTea time, have a wonderful discussion. Let's see where the conversation takes you. And I'm really looking forward to hearing what you've got to say today. So have a great ELTea time. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you very much, Del, for the wonderful introduction. Yes, and I think in the chat, yeah, Blue has got a student, right?
Well, a former student by the looks of it. So yeah, hello V, a former student of mine apparently. So thanks for joining. Yeah.
Yes.
Go ahead, Super. The platform's yours. Go ahead and introduce what we're going to be doing today.
Yes, welcome to ELTea time, and it's great to have this chat show like come back in 2023 because we've been doing it for 2 years now, and this is the first time for Blue and for 2023 as well. So great welcome and great like a pleasure to have this very first session with you guys, and feel free to have a conversation with us while we go through the questions here. So we're going to focus on correction, as I mentioned yesterday, especially how to correct students' errors in their writing. And are there any techniques or any strategies we could use to encourage students to correct themselves and then to save your time to make error correction in writing maybe a better experience for both you and your students? So we're going to start from what kind of errors are there. Yeah, maybe some special errors we need to pay attention to in our student group in Asia. And when, of course, when is the maybe best time or better occasions for us to correct our students' errors in writing? Yeah, maybe different from speaking, right? And who is going to be involved in the error correction? Of course, not only you, the teacher, but also as many learners as possible. And lastly, we're going to introduce some techniques about time saving and also encouraging and engaging students in the process of error correction. Okay, clear for you, Blue?
Indeed, yeah.
Okay, so let's just begin our discussion starting from what? Okay, so what kind of errors are there? What's your experience, Blue?
Yeah, well, what I would like to do, Super, is give you a scenario that, well, basically, you and I are very different. Myself as a native speaker, yourself as having English as your second language. So what I would like to discuss first, really, is comparisons between ourselves and the people in the chat with how we approached writing as a young learner, you know, through primary and secondary education, all the way up to university level, because I imagine our journeys and our difficulties are very different and polarizing almost. And I think that's going to be unique and interesting to talk about in the sense that myself, okay, I see writing as a skill, regardless of that being in English or any other particular language. It's easy to acquire your native tongue in the spoken form. Listening, no problem. I can hear my mum complain all day long. I hear it. Reading, again, is a skill that acquires, you know, at a very young age. But almost I see fundamentally writing as a skill that not everyone acquires in their first language anyway. you get good writers and you can get people that can write and you get people that just simply can't write. So when you translate that into your second language, when you're trying to write, again, in English, it's a real challenge. So for me growing up, my problem was spelling. Grammar wasn't really an issue because I understood the grammar organically. Okay. But how about yourself, Super? Was it spelling, or are we more sort of going towards the grammatical mistakes?
I think, yeah, for me, spelling seems like not the first, the biggest, challenge. Of course, the way of word choice, because I have a very limited, word vocabulary bank as a second language learner. And the grammar, the sentence structure I have mastered is also really limited. So I'm not worried about spelling. I'm worried about what language I can use to put them together in a sentence and to deliver the message I want to say. That's, the first, I think, the biggest challenge for me as a second language learner.
Indeed. And then also, as educators, myself, yourself, the people in the chat, also the way we approached writing and teaching writing, because that was a real shock for me when I started my ESL teaching journey 12, 13, 14 years ago. My background's in journalism. My degree is in sports journalism. I've always had a passion for writing. But then when I got put into a situation where I had to teach writing, my word, completely different experience, alien to me. And that's where I think there's value. And this is often done in Vietnam, where it's not the native speaking teachers who teach writing. Even though I'm comfortable with structure, I'm comfortable with spelling, hey, my grammar over the last decade plus and explanation of grammar has certainly improved purely by teaching. But you guys, Super, as someone who's learned English that way in terms of grammatical structure, has that helped you in the classroom when it comes to teaching?
I have to admit that I didn't even get to know grammar, the meta language of grammar as an English, a major student in university. The grammar course taught in university for English major student didn't really make sense to me until I became an English teacher and I started to prepare my grammar course for my students. I started to, think about how grammar could make sense to my student, and I learned how to teach grammar that way as well. So it's always a very huge challenge. So teaching grammar, no. The answer to your question is no. The way I learned my grammar didn't really help me to teach.
Yeah, again, two completely different approaches. I mean, Ria in the chat has just alluded to it there. So it depends, I guess, what school system you're going through. Whether, again, English is incorporated into other subjects, you're going to be very lucky, and that will help your writing naturally. If English is exclusively just your second language learning, much like it was for French for myself, and then it becomes a lot more challenging. Let's see what Stephen's put there. Stephen's put a nice paragraph. I get learners to share their work amongst themselves based around a rubric. And I think that's something we'll touch upon, Stephen, definitely, in terms of rubric approach. But back to what you were saying, Super. What mistakes, again, we've alluded there to spelling and grammar. What mistakes do you think are common for students?
Yes, I think in writing especially, we definitely have got grammar errors or mistakes. For example, very common wrong tenses or very common subject-verb agreement, and sometimes word order as well. Sometimes also happens for sentence fragments. They don't have a whole a sentence to put together. So these are very common grammatical errors. And also, as I mentioned, the word choice, because we have very limited word choice. So we didn't really make the meaning using the right words. So that could be another common error. And also in writing, we have got a punctuation. Sorry. Sorry about my punctuation as another common error, as well as spelling as well.
Yeah, V has just referenced lexicon there in the chat. again, that's something that has to be progressive, doesn't it? We all know that as a foundation level, and you build upon vocabulary building, particularly when you get to the sort of stage of essay writing, where really it's a challenge to find those choice words, the correct words, and also be comfortable with what synonyms work. Because synonym is a magical word, but also a sort of misleading word at times, because it's not as simple as just going to a thesaurus or a dictionary definition and going, hey, I can substitute that word for that word. There's always context to understanding when you apply those synonyms. So word choice is a massive thing. And that's something that can often get lost when you do directly translate from one language to another. I found that very common with students, where I'm like,
that's exactly
the word you've used, the word you've chosen does mean that same word, okay? But within the context of how you've used it, we just wouldn't do that. And that's something that it can be a real challenge for students, probably far more than grammatical mistakes often, because they think by the time they've mastered the grammar, they've got it. And then all of a sudden you're nitpicking the word choice as well and going, well, and they're like, why, teacher? Why do we use that adjective, which means the same as that adjective, but not in this context? And it's just that answer. It's context. And that can be a real challenge as well. What else? You've got collocations in there as well, V. Yeah, quite right.
Yeah.
Verb noun collocations.
Like comes after. That's right. And Blue, you just mentioned the most painful thing for me as an English language learner growing up, because I think that really takes a lot of time for you to get to know the context and get enough vocabulary to fit into different contexts. I always try to find the right word, but it's very hard. It takes a long time for exposure to the language.
That's the key word you just used there, Super, exposure. So often, again, you get that magic question from students. Well, how can I improve that then, teacher? Because you're telling me I've got a good vocabulary bank, but I've chosen the incorrect word. Exposure. Just read your magazines. If you can access the BBC, try and access it. Any online newspapers. If you want to watch an episode of How I Met Your Mother, watch an episode of How I Met Your Mother. Just watch that daily organic lexicon being used in its natural context. And that can go a long way to helping. We've got some good comments here. Bow now. Students tend to translate word by word from their L1 to their English. That was me. I thought I was the smartest guy in grade 7 when I would just find this online dictionary in the infancy of the internet and translate my English to French and then hand it in to the teacher. And then I was surprised when she would be really, really angry with my efforts. It's so obvious when students do that, bow now. So hopefully you can encourage them to do otherwise. Other things as well, Super, in terms of mistakes. Again, incorrect articles or omissions of articles, prepositions. Now, prepositions are a challenge, aren't they? They really are. They, again, one of those organic things. You just have to sort of know what preposition works with the relationship between the verb and the noun. And that's a challenge, and it takes time. And also, let's not even venture towards that dark area of idiomatic language, phrasal verbs, idioms. Okay, a completely different ballgame. But yes, so many things. Are there anything else off the top of your head, mistakes that students make, Super?
I just want to add, sometimes they don't make mistakes. They're good. The grammar is good. The vocabulary is all right, but they get to a very wordy. They write in a very wordy way, which makes their writing not easy to read, not clear to deliver the message. So wordiness could be another error we could correct. Not error. Something we could improve. Yes. So
you use the word mistake, correct, but we will have to, again, and that's something with writing, which we've touched upon in the last 2 sessions this week. It's all being about making mistakes, accepting your mistakes, and using them as a sort of forward motion to improve. So there will be elements of mistakes and correction there. And also, you just touched on it there, Super, a lack of cohesiveness and sort of cohesion when it comes to their writing, basically connecting their ideas together to formulate decent structure, particularly when it comes to different writing direction and angles. Are they writing for purpose? informative piece, descriptive piece, narrative piece. So there's so many different angles as well, which can cause confusion when it comes to the writers. Someone's just mentioned it in the text here, Super, and forgive me, I can't pronounce the name. I don't know if that's Mandarin or Cantonese.
Mandarin, yeah, Mr. Hu.
And what? Okay, thank you, Super. Can you say that name again? I'd like to say that.
Hu Fandeng.
Wu Van Gun, thank you. I apologize for my pronunciation. But again, you're quite right. You've put in real situations, in real organic situations, use your English, okay? And again, that's something I'd like to sort of touch upon, Super. Is there a connection between speaking mistakes and writing mistakes?
There is definitely a link, but I think the errors students make in speaking and writing could be quite different.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we might need to, yeah, but some like certain reoccurring like grammar mistakes could appear in both writing and speaking. But because in writing the students can see it and correct it while they write, so it can be avoided as well. Yeah, sometimes.
So I'd like to try something with our attendees right now. We've been speaking about the lexicon, vocabulary bank. I'm going to give you a word, okay, everybody? I'm going to give you a word, and in the chat, I want you to write one word that you connect and associate to the word that I just said, okay?
Can I try it as well?
Of course, Super. So by all means, you could write a synonym for the word that I say, or you could just write a word that you associate and connect it with, okay? So I'm going to say a word. I want you to write one word in the chat that you associate with the word that I said. Here we go. Happiness.
Again?
Happiness. A couple of joys, a few joys. Beer, says Del. Thanks, Del from Thailand. Gladness, wellness. Total, says Karen. Cheers, says Mansoret. Joyful, a lot of joyfuls. Okay, let me give you another one. Oh, yeah, I like that one, Theo. Money. Gareth, yes, you have read my mind there, sir. Saturday. Or for me, Friday evening. Okay. Let me give you one more. Let's think. Togetherness. Over the moon, Lee. There you go. Nice idiomatic phrase. So I just said togetherness. Andre, wife, groove, harmony, family. War, says Miss Wynn. Play, gathering, harmony. Yeah, you get the idea, because that's what vocabulary is. And this is the analogy I often use with my students, especially when it comes to synonyms. Think of language like a tree. Okay, you've got your big redwood tree, multiple branches stem from the tree. Okay, so whilst this tree might have friendly as one of its branches, next to friendly is considerate, because friendly people are considerate. The next branch is thoughtful, because if you're thoughtful, you're considerate. Maybe if you're thoughtful, you are unselfish. And there's so many branches connected to this same tree, but contextually, the words are very different. Okay, and it's a really nice way, just what I did there, but maybe in the classroom, of sort of getting your students to sort of evoke and give you these words that are connected to the language, whilst not necessarily being synonyms directly for them. So super, that's what mistakes are. How about why mistakes are made?
That's the evidence for learning, I think. Yeah, mistakes are not necessarily like a negative thing. I think we all learn by like trial and error. We make mistakes in writing, which shows like we're experimenting with them and we're trying out to use the new ideas, use the new language. So I think it's really a good thing, not really always like bad thing.
Yeah, and a couple of people wrote it in the chat. It's gone now, but basically transferring from L1 to L2. Of course, within certain words and the simplicity of some sentences, you can directly translate. But I know from my experience trying to speak in Vietnamese, that if I try translating using Google Translate as a program, as an app, even that makes mistakes with the simplest of sentences. So the idea of like translating a whole essay from L1 to L2, you're looking for trouble right there. What's that? Mistakes come from not much experience in using the language. And that's the next point on my notes. Exactly that. Yeah. Just lack of experience utilizing said language in the context of writing or speaking, whatever it might be, can lead to big mistakes as well. You're quite right there.
Yeah, and I agree with V, like the mistakes are the opportunities for us to learn, for students to learn. Yes, so shall we move on to who and when? So yeah, I think these answers are quite simple, right? So for marking writing, so when do we do it? We usually do it after students have finished that work. But it could happen, for example, if you ask your students to do the writing in the class, you can mark them immediately after they hand in, and you do it in the class. Sometimes you can involve your students to do it together in a pair or in small groups. And it also can happen like a few lessons after or tomorrow or the next week, yeah, depending on how you would like to give the feedback to the students. And Blue, how about you? When do you usually mark the students' writing?
Pretty much echo what you said. And again, it's dependent on level and what exactly you're trying to achieve in your classroom. Of course, if it's a homework task, if it's an essay task, a piece of substantial writing from a secondary school level student, it will definitely be after and as a reflection piece to look at mistakes, improve. But purely looking at it from maybe a primary level, maybe grade 5, 3, 2, all the way up to grade 6, let's say. I don't know, my experience in the classroom would be them writing simple sentences based on what we've just learned in the spoken form. Okay, that's how those sort of workbooks, textbooks tend to work. So what I would do is, of course, identify said mistakes, and all the students are making the same ones. Maybe they've omitted the verb, maybe they've forgotten to write the plural S, maybe they've put verb 1 instead of verb 2 when using the simple past. Okay, and what I used to do is word jumble. So I would take all of those sentences that were mistakes and say, okay, you're struggling with the simple past here. And I would put them onto a PowerPoint or onto the board, and then I'd give them pieces of paper, multiple pieces of paper, small pieces of paper, where basically there's my incorrect sentence on the board. And for one piece of paper, they need to sort of reorganize it in front of themselves to make it correct. So realizing that verb 1 should have been verb 2, complete it in front of them. It was a really nice way to sort of approach that mistake collectively as a class. And whilst I digress, that's the point. Secondary student, maybe you're going to take it head on directly. These are your mistakes. This is why. Maybe your approach to a primary level will be a little bit different. You'll again do it collectively as opposed to individually, and maybe incorporate it into a class activity.
Yes, I think it really matters, like when it comes to the age, and also it comes to the language proficiency level of the students. We could definitely choose different strategies and take the different timing for the correction to take place. And also, as who will be correcting, I think it's also the same case for young learners, for teenagers, for adults. We could choose the right way to engage them. For example, for adult learners or university students, they're more able to correct themselves and use tools, online tools to help them with the correcting. Or sometimes they even want to correct before they hand it over to you. I think some teachers also mentioned in the chat that ChatGPT is helping them to correct. I think that's not a 100% negative thing, because they want to try to correct before they hand over, which means they want to do a better job, and they can be exposed to better examples using these tools as well. So that can be a good positive part as well.
Yeah, and speaking of AI and apps, not just exclusively artificial intelligence, but things like Hemingway, or I think someone mentioned earlier, Grammarly. Now, Grammarly is something I've not used, but I've only been exposed to it through the annoying Facebook and YouTube adverts that appear every time I'm trying to watch a Nicki Minaj music video. So apart from that, I know what it is as a platform, and I'm sure it's very beneficial. But one thing I did try is ChatGTP, and I must admit it was very good. A couple of times I put in incorrect paragraphs and asked it to correct. And not only does it have the ability to correct you, but when asking for details on why they're making the corrections, it's fantastic. It explains it in very explicit, direct grammatical terms, but it's very, very clear to understand. So I wouldn't dismiss AI as a platform. And unfortunately, the direction we're going in, as a tool, students will use it. But I think we mentioned in previous sessions this week, Super, you can't be reliant on
mindset.
Yeah, exactly. You've got to embrace criticism. You've got to embrace failure. And whilst ChatGTP is useful, it shouldn't be seen as a shortcut. I do worry that we use too many shortcuts, which sort of undervalue and really will sort of stem students' growth when it comes to understanding language and certainly the development of language, because they're simply not finding out the why and the reasoning. They're simply just clicking a button in order to find the answers and to make their piece of work perfect. Theo here. Again, I apologize for my pronunciation. Is it Theo? Fio? But yeah, Zoom, of course, Zoom or any offline in the class, peer-to-peer exchange of material. We spoke about that yesterday in our Embracing Mistakes webinar session, so definitely. And Mansoure, students are not aware of context. Yeah, I completely agree. Is there anything you do there, Super, with regards to context? One thing I do, particularly for primary level, is I read short stories and ask for them to write the ending before I reveal the ending. Okay, so there's lots of fables and sort of moral-driven stories that are quite short. And so it's nice to see their writing when they sort of can guess the ending, but how they structure it and understand the context as well. So short stories are really good, but get your students to complete the ending. And also cartoon strips. If you Google cartoon strips template, you're going to see all those boxes, again, for the bang, the bosh, pow, but also the speech bubbles as well. And then you can give context to what you want them to write about and see what language they can deliver. And obviously you can judge their structure as well. Anything you do, Super, when it comes to context?
Yeah, I think it's very important to get them to have some input before they start to write. Give them like some reading or some stories that they can digest and understand before they start to express their own opinions. Based on that understanding, probably the context will be there for their writing. Yes, usually for students, they don't know what to write because they don't have maybe enough input. So giving them the right amount of input in the right level of language proficiency could probably help with the context building process as well. So yeah, as we just discussed, we could have students correct by themselves. We could have peer correction, and we also have teacher correction. Of course, we also do small groups or maybe even all class correction. So now, let's get there to the end. So what kind of techniques, what kind of alternatives, instead of like marking students writing using a red pen, highlighting all the errors in that piece of paper, what kind of alternatives we have for teachers and students to make that marking process easier and save some time, and also to develop students' skills in correcting themselves or correcting each other.
Yeah,
maybe I can start.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I can start by sharing like a few very simple techniques teachers can use. As we all know, we use red pens, so sometimes we could use different colors. Yeah, I think it's a very small technique, but maybe try to be more friendly in the way how you give the feedback to the students using different colors of pens to indicate different like types of errors. Just like the marking code you mentioned, Blue, I think that could be one very simple like alternative that you can use. And also, I think there is a great idea, even especially for young learners. sometimes we do have like certain grammar points to teach in each unit, right? And then we want to focus on that certain grammar points or certain like word choice. So we don't need to correct like every error in the writing. We just correct maybe one type of error. For example, the tense, if we're teaching the tenses this unit or in this like course, we could just correct the one type of error you would like the students to master. So there is no need to correct every error. Yeah, just focus on the target grammar. And also you can ask your students to do that as well, because that will reduce the level of difficulty, right? You ask your students to correct each other after writing that piece of work. You ask them to only to underline the verb tense error they notice from their peers' work. So that would be very targeted and easy to do both for students and teachers. And also I also like Blue's ideas of word jumble. So we could do that as an alternative for correcting students' writing as well. For example, if you have like 20 pieces of students writing work, you don't like mark every one of them and hand it over to your students. Instead, you just pick all the errors from these 20 pieces of writing and put them together into another like piece of writing. And then you hand over that piece to all the students, ask them to do a small group work or all class work, ask them to pick out the errors. They're not marking like someone's like work. They are marking everybody else's like work, like errors together. So
like
that's not
that.
like threatening. Yeah, that's not threatening,
Yeah.
because you're not being judged by others, because it's no one's like work. So at the same time, all the errors will be there. The students will have an opportunity to correct the errors and notice as well, because sometimes you tell them, okay, this is not right, you need to correct it. They just forget, right? But when they noticed it by themselves and correct by themselves in this way, they will definitely remember it better. So these are some alternatives, yeah, from my experience.
Let me get clarity on that one, because I really like that idea, Super. So basically you go through your students' work, you identify collectively the mistakes that are being made: incorrect preposition, wrong tense, verb noun, any collocations, any verb noun agreement maybe with the incorrect auxiliary verb. I don't know, many mistakes. And then you piece it together in a new piece of writing for your students to collectively work upon. Nice, I like that. That's the first time I've heard that. I like that one a lot. For me, basically, guys, well, firstly, let me take you back a number of years. When I was a child, I used to, again, my background is in journalism. As a child, I love writing stories. But my word, if I ever had to give that piece of paper to someone to read my story, they would run out of breath. Because one thing I really failed to understand as a young child was punctuation. And so as a teacher, one thing I encourage my students to do, if they're by themselves and they've got no one to check their reading for them, is two things. Number one, read out loud. Read out your story, your piece of work, and let's see if you can take a natural breath. Where should that dot go to punctuate the full stop, the period? Where should a comma go? Okay, those kind of things. And also with the technology we have also, you can even get students to record it, and then they watch themselves back reading the story. And as someone listening and watching themselves, did they understand the story, or was it just full speed ahead? Okay, so that's one that really helps with punctuation, reading out loud or just video correcting. Okay, it helped me a lot, because it wasn't until I hit about 14, 15 that punctuation just kind of clicked for me. And I understood the magic of it and how it really helps to structure and how pieces of writing work, just like the spoken word. Secondly, going back to writing skills, I mentioned if it's narrative driven, you might look at short stories or comic strips, but maybe it's a descriptive piece for secondary level, okay? I would just simplify it to its lowest form. I would have half the students turn their back on the class, other ones show them an object, maybe a banana. They have to write a description of the piece and pass it to their partner, who will guess what it was on their description. Of course, a banana is a simple example. You know, it's a yellow fruit that monkeys like to eat. But you can get really creative with the items that they have to describe. Maybe you omit words that they cannot use. Okay, and all of a sudden, creative juices get flowing. Can they describe this item to their partner in written form without using certain words or whatever the item might be? I really enjoy doing that one. And also informative pieces, again, completely different pieces to give information. So there's a number of different ways to write and reasons for writing. Again, we could speak about it for hours upon hours. But to conclude, really, from my point of view, it's basically rinse and repeat when it comes to writing. You have to be exposed to natural texts, okay? Read your Harry Potters, read your Twilight series, okay? Make sure you're exposing yourself to these kind of texts. And it's revision and repeat. You're going to make mistakes, improve upon them. You're going to make mistakes, you're going to improve upon them. There's no magic formula.
Yes, I think so. Yeah, and also I would like to add a few maybe ideas as well. The idea is we don't only end the marking by picking out the arrows and hand the piece over to the students. We just develop more tasks based on the students' like arrows. That in that way we engage students in the correcting process, not only like a done marking. So yeah, I think we could maybe use some examples from the students' work and make them into a dictation task if necessary. Yeah, for the students to emphasize, like draw their focus on the errors they made and do a dictation on that. And also we could, yeah, I think it's important for the students to understand the criteria and the marking like standard as well. So we discuss these information with the students before and after the writing, and also give information feedback to them with that kind of standard or criteria, so that they know how they could do it and for their peers, and also understand your feedback better as well. So do you agree with the students what you're going to do with the marking process, and let them get involved as much as possible and give them information about the criteria, and also, yeah, don't only mark them, but also use the mistakes and the errors as an opportunity to do more tasks and to, yeah, get the students to learn from the mistakes and errors as well.
And I think, honestly, Super, that's the bottom line of everything we've tried to sort of explain this week between the 3 sessions that we've hosted. Embrace mistakes, build upon mistakes, whether that be in speaking, reading, listening, whatever of the 4 key skills it might be, but particularly with writing, because as I referenced at the start, whether you're a native speaker, writing is something you're either good at or you're not. You only have to look at people's social media posts to see that, oh, that person can't really put a sentence together. Oh, that person can't put a paragraph together. So as a second language skill, it really is a challenge. And I think it's about embracing that challenge, being open to mistakes. And as a good teacher there, you just mentioned Super, building upon those mistakes with extra activities. Yeah, what we got here from Fio, totally agree with Super. Yeah, students don't usually check their mistakes back. We should build upon them, discuss upon them. Yeah, you're completely right.
Yes. And yeah, that really marks I think the end of our growth mindset, like a webinar series. Yeah, we have been talking about how to do that in the 3 sessions throughout the week. And hopefully teachers have already built a growth mindset yourself, and also knowing some ideas and practical like tips of how to cultivate that kind of mindset in your classroom, and use some techniques and strategies to improve that process as well. Yeah, so thank you very much for your time today, and it's already Friday, right? So happy to be, yeah, we're going to have fun like on Friday night, and I hope you enjoy your time with us, and also wish you have a great weekend.
Yeah, thank you, everyone. I'm going to go to the supermarket. I've got to go get some ingredients. I'm cooking for the wife. I love that Toto there has put a Batman Begins quote of all the movies. Very interesting, Toto. Thank you. Lots of comments coming through now. Thanks so much for hanging out with us over the past 3 sessions, everybody. Again, just as Del alluded to at the beginning, there's so many familiar names that I start to know straight away from the name themselves. So it's really nice to see that you are on board. You know, you come back and see us again. It's great. Good husband, said someone there. Honestly, whoever wrote that, I can't see it now. This is a rarity. Me in the kitchen is a rarity. Trust me. It was forced upon me. Super. Thanks for hanging out and being an awesome host with myself. Anything else to say before we go?
Yeah, just stay tuned. We're going to have more like training sessions or ELT times coming soon. Don't forget to check out the notice on Facebook or WeChat. We will be back very soon, and we look forward to seeing you with us and having these discussions with you. Really made my day as well.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks for hanging out with us. See you again.
See you. Have a good weekend. By the way, someone mentioned about the certificates. Yes, try to find that email after. And for this ELT time, we don't have a certificate. We only have 2 certificates for you for the previous 2 webinar sessions. So yes, stay patient. Yeah, try to look at your folders in the email. There will be one from Macmillan Education Asia. Yes, have a good weekend. Bye-bye.
See you guys. All the best. Happy Friday.